I want to take a few minutes and explain some of the great work that we're all doing in the world of digital. And in this episode of Digitally, let's start with analytics and let's just say mixed integer program optimization techniques. Actually, as it turns out, optimization is something you and I completely get. Every morning when you start from home, you're thinking about the fastest route from your home to your office. It's really just the same idea, but at a much different scale and a high degree of complexity. Now I'll use an example of something the team's been working on, and they've just done some fantastic work that I had a chance to review, and it's actually around pricing for truck leasing. It's really interesting because truck leasing, as it turns out, and many of us have rented a truck, driven a child to a college, and then left or turned the truck in the second cities. It's all about these city pairs. You can have almost 50,000 city pairs in a country like the United States. And then, of course, the very interesting thing is when you start pricing for those truck leases by city pairs, you're having to think about market demand. You're looking at competitive pricing. You're thinking about price elasticity. You're thinking about seasonal trends. You're thinking about where your inventory is. And you're putting all of that into play as you price. And you normally do that for instance, hotel night pricing or airline seat pricing. Now, here's the more interesting thing about truck leasing, in addition to the fact that the scale is much larger. It's the fact that the inventory actually moves around. It's truly a problem of moving parts, because you think about it, the way you price, you take into account what the inventory is in any one specific location, because you want to price to optimize your return on asset. But equally, once you've priced it and the price gets used, that inventory actually moves from that location into another location. So you kind of have this recursive sort of a problem, because one feeds the other and the other comes back and feeds the first. And so you have to sort of mathematically solve for it at a much more compute-intensive level. And so here's the good news, right? We use mixed integer program optimization technique or something like this. And the good news is we now have the compute capacity we need. And by the way, it's even better than that. We have it as a service and we pay for it by the drink. And so for once, the math is actually no longer the problem. We have just the ability. And by the way, there's been significant advantages around algorithmic modeling, around new statistical analytic tools and toolkits that we have. And so the combination of those things, I think, just brings us to a point where the math is no longer the long pole in the tent. It's actually about getting the job done. But here's the other part of getting the job done. You have to think about the human in the loop. You can't just put the math and walk away. You actually have to think about how do those insights go into actions. So in that example, for instance, the team spent a lot of time worrying about what if an event were to happen, like a concert happens in a city or a competitor gets sold out, as an example. You don't want users to go in and override the price, which is obviously the obvious normal tendency and reaction because we know more. You want users to actually go in and change the assumptions. You want the models to be able to learn from those changes assumptions and get better over time. And so as you design this, it's not about the math, it's actually about the process and the way you actually instrument it in a manner that it becomes sustainable, that it gets self-improving, that it has the logic and the basis to be able to perpetuate over time. And that's the other half, beyond just the math, to getting analytics right. Now, the reality is, in this example, we were able to get fantastic results. Revenue is up by 50% or over 50%. Margin growth is double digits. Obviously return on asset just shoots up because you're able to use the inventory optimally. And customer satisfaction, you can imagine, goes a couple of notches up because clients are satisfied because they have availability for where they need it to be. And so all metrics looks fantastic when you put the power of analytics into play and transform the way you run your business. By contrast, think about if something goes wrong, and if you didn't do that, all those numbers start heading the wrong way. And so it's becoming very clear why analytics is such a large driver of transformative value and why all of us are using it so much more increasingly every day in our normal business operations. I like to think that we're in the golden age of analytics. We now have the compute power that we need to crunch through the problem sets, and we have the algorithms that we've developed over time that we can bring to bear. We also have the intuition and the business judgment that needs to be coupled and combined with process design and a mindset and a framework to make that happen. So we've got all the components now in place. I am a big believer in analytics as a driver of transformative value, not only for today, but I think what we're going for the future. Because one of the things analytics really does is it allows us to balance human judgment, business intuition, and then use as mathematical models to pull that together and then be able to drive it into predictable outcomes. And it's that combination of science and creativity. It's the human in the loop and the math at play that are intersecting in meaningfully great ways and delivering significant results. I hope that you will take the opportunity to share with me stories that you're seeing in your journeys with analytics and modeling and statistical techniques and challenges and opportunities that you come across. And more broadly, I hope you'll follow me as we together journey through the world of digital and look to areas that we're all investing time in and learning from. Thank you for being part of this.